Devil May Cry is an action-adventure game that was developed and published by Capcom and released on the PS2 in August of 2001. It was met with critical acclaim at the time as it seemed to take the Resident Evil formula and mix things up with hack-and-slash combat. The game was incredibly popular and went on to sell millions of copies across the PS2's life cycle. What is interesting about Devil May Cry is that when it initially went into development, it was supposed to be Resident Evil 4. At some point during this development, I assume Capcom decided to pull the plug for one reason or another, but not let the work done on this title go to waste, and so Devil May Cry was born. So the game begins with our main character Dante the Demon Hunter sitting in his office, minding his own business when BAM!
Whoa, slow down, babe.
A woman named Trish launches through the front door on a motorcycle. Trish offers Dante a job to take down the demon Emperor Mundus. This is also the demon that murdered his family 20 years ago. After agreeing to take the job, we immediately cut to Dante and Trish arriving at an ominous looking castle located on a remote island, and off we go. Moving forward, the story follows Dante exploring this creepy castle, slicing his way through an army of demons in the hope of reaching and defeating Mundus. It's about as simple as stories get, but it is still enjoyable as it clearly doesn't take itself very seriously and has enough one-liners and cool action to hold your attention. As I mentioned earlier, Devil May Cry took the Resident Evil formula and added hack-and-slash combat, and it would be pretty hard to come up with a better description than that. This game is all about running around a specific area, finding keys and other items that will allow you to open a locked door that you spotted earlier on. There is a fair amount of backtracking, but where DMC differs to Resident Evil is that it is broken up into missions which definitely help you keep track of what you need to do next, and not only do these breaks in between missions provide you with an opportunity to purchase items and upgrades, each new mission clearly tells you what your new objective is. So even though it does have a similar open structure to the popular zombie franchise, the missions guide you through and almost make the game more focused and linear. Most missions require you to fight your way through a number of demons and figure out a way to unlock the door to the next area, and they're all quite brief, taking anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes to complete, which works in the game's favour if I'm honest, as it's very enticing to play just one more mission. Now, I've talked about this game for way too long without covering the combat, so let's get into it. Devil May Cry's combat is a mixture of hack and slash and third-person shooting. Dante initially comes equipped with a single sword and 2 pistols, but you unlock more weapons as you progress that allow you to choose your playstyle, such as a sawn-off shotgun to get up close and personal, or changing to a lighter sword to aid your movement speed. Through timed presses of the circle button, Dante can perform a number of different melee combos, and through rapidly tapping the X button, Dante fires off rounds just as quickly as you'd like. The game encourages experimentation with these moves and incentivizes you to not rely on the same attack too often by giving you a combat rating which contributes to your score at the end of each mission, providing you with more of the game's currency. It's a fun combat system, and although you'll most likely start the game by mashing buttons, you'll quickly learn that the best way to keep your enemies at bay is through combos. The different attacks are easy to learn, and adding a little flair to your fighting skills doesn't feel like too much of a challenge that you'll give up on trying to be stylish as soon as possible. This is not to say that the game isn't challenging, because Devil May Cry is certainly a game that doesn't play around. This franchise was always notorious for its slightly high difficulty, and it is one of the reasons why I've always enjoyed these games. Don't worry, I'm not saying that this is Dark Souls before Dark Souls, but mindlessly chopping away at demons will see your life bar deplete fairly quickly. It doesn't take many hits at all from regular enemies to kill you, and it only takes a few from boss characters to do the same. If you're not careful, you'll burn through your valuable health items and continues, but luckily the game is fair with its difficulty by having most enemies telegraph their attacks, so your best route to success is paying attention to their movements, looking for openings and playing it safe. The action feels rewarding as a result. Some enemies may get in a few frustrating cheap shots from time to time, but nothing that will deter you from playing more core of the game. This title isn't completely free from issues. There are a few things I would tweak if I could. For example, the camera placement does help create some really nice looking shots, but at other times it can be quite obstructive with enemies attacking you from off screen. In some areas there are limited amounts of enemies, and in others they seem to respawn endlessly, meaning you could waste time and health in a random corridor when it's just best to run straight through. Finally, there are moments of awkward platforming when you can't get Dante to do exactly what you want, but this is a minor gripe at best. For a game that is almost 18 years old and was released very early into the generation, Devil May Cry looks impressive. I think it helps that the developers obviously had a clear vision for the design of this world, and its gothic feel is shown throughout all of the environments. Not only does this world have character, but the assets and textures that fill the world have a level of clarity and definition to them that wasn't seen too often in games of this period. There is an intricacy to the architecture that is to be appreciated, and it is certainly a game that isn't jarring to look at so many years later. The same could be said for the characters. Whilst their clothing looks incredibly dated today, the character models are surprisingly detailed for 2001, and although there aren't tons of cutscenes, when you do get a closer look at everyone, their animation seems to be up to the standard also. Adding to the positives is the soundtrack, which seems to bounce between creepy orchestral ambience and frantic electronic sounding metal. Both sounds benefit the game by adding to the gothic style in the quieter moments and adding to the cheesy action movie style in the louder moments. Speaking of cheesiness, the voice acting follows suit and illustrates just how silly all of this is, with our main character endlessly taunting his opponents and showing absolutely no sign of taking this threat seriously, but at least it's delivered well.
What a big surprise. I hope for your sake you got something inside that big body of yours.
Devil May Cry caught me off guard quite a bit when playing it for the first time all of these years later. Not only has it aged quite well visually, but it's still incredibly easy to jump into despite being a challenging title at the same time. Is the acrobatic swordplay and gravity-defying gunplay as mind-blowing as it was back in 2001? No, of course not, but Devil May Cry is a simple enough premise with a lot of fun systems that still haven't gone out of style. Yes, at times it does show its age, and yes, at times it can border on frustrating, but overall this experience offers enough fun and stylish hack and slash action that you'd be doing your collection a disservice for not picking it up.